This is my true story. I was married for 30 years. I cooked, cleaned, and built a life around the man I loved. I believed he would stand beside me until the end. But one day he packed his bag and said he needed space. Then he disappeared with a woman half his age. My world collapsed, but I didn't break. A week later, the phone rang, and the voice on the other end changed everything. You will not believe what happened next. Before that, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is right now. And please subscribe so my story can reach more people. When he left, it didn't happen with a fight. There were no loud words or broken dishes. It was quiet, like someone slowly turning off the lights in a house that had been warm for years. He packed a small bag, said he needed time to think, and walked out the door. I stood by the window and watched him drive away. I didn't stop him. I thought he would come back after a few days, maybe with an apology, maybe with flowers, but he never did. For days, I tried to pretend things were normal. I made his favorite breakfast, folded his clothes, kept his shoes by the door. I told myself he just needed a break. But every night, the bed beside me stayed empty. The silence started to feel louder than his presence ever did. I began to realize that sometimes the end of love doesn't happen suddenly. It dies slowly, one routine at a time, until there's nothing left to save. A week later, I saw the photos. My niece showed them to me on her phone, not knowing I didn't already know. He was smiling in a restaurant, his arm around a younger woman. They looked happy. He looked lighter, as if 30 years of marriage had been a weight he was glad to drop. My hands trembled as I stared at the screen. It wasn't anger I felt first. It was disbelief. I couldn't understand how someone could erase a whole life that quickly. That night, I went through our photo albums. Every picture looked like a lie. I saw our wedding photo, his hand holding mine, both of us smiling with hope. I saw pictures from vacations, birthdays, ordinary days at home. I remembered how we used to sit together in the evenings, drinking tea and talking about the future. I had built every dream around him. Now, all I had left were empty chairs and fading memories. The house felt different after that. His smell faded from the pillows. His slippers gathered dust. Even the walls felt tired, like they missed his voice. I still cooked his meals out of habit. I still checked the door every time I heard a car stop outside. Hope is a cruel thing. It doesn't die easily. But each morning when I woke up to another empty bed, it died a little more. Friends came to visit. They said the usual things, that I was strong, that I would move on, that he didn't deserve me. I nodded and smiled, but inside I felt hollow. Strength isn't something you choose. It's what's left when you have no other option. I didn't cry in front of anyone. I saved my tears for the nights when no one could hear me. Bills started arriving with his name still on them. I handled everything. The electricity, the taxes, the small repairs he used to take care of. Every piece of paper felt like a reminder that he was still part of my life, even when he wasn't there. I boxed up his clothes and moved them to the storage room. I didn't throw them away. I couldn't. Letting go of the person is easier than letting go of the life you shared. One day, while cleaning his desk, I found an old note he had written to me years ago. It said, "I'll always take care of you." I stared at the handwriting for a long time. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Promises mean nothing when people change. The man who wrote those words was gone long before he walked out the door. Time moved slowly after that. Days blended together. The house became smaller, quieter. I stopped expecting the sound of his car in the driveway. I stopped checking my phone. I accepted that he was gone, that the person I had loved for most of my life had chosen someone else. It wasn't just betrayal. It was the end of something that had once felt permanent. Still, I kept his ring in the drawer beside my bed. I couldn't bring myself to throw it away. Maybe because even after everything, part of me still wanted to believe that love doesn't just vanish. Maybe because I wanted to remember that I had once been loved, even if it didn't last. That was how my marriage ended, not with a fight, but with silence, with distance, with a door closing softly behind him. I thought it was the worst pain I would ever feel. I didn't know that a week later, a single phone call would make me feel it all over again. After he left, the house felt like a stranger's place. I walked through the rooms that once felt full of life and saw only emptiness. His toothbrush still sat by the sink, his cup on the shelf, his slippers by the bed. For days I didn't move them. It was easier to pretend he might walk back through the door. But time passed, and pretending started to hurt more than truth. I stopped opening the curtains early in the morning. I stopped playing the radio when I cooked. Every sound reminded me of him, the kettle boiling, the chair creaking, the way he used to hum when reading the newspaper. I didn't realize how many parts of my life were built around him until he was gone. I thought if I kept busy, maybe the pain would fade. So I cleaned. I cleaned until my back ached and my hands turned red. I washed his clothes, folded them neatly, and put them in boxes. It was like packing up a life that no longer belonged to me. His side of the bed stayed empty. I changed the sheets but kept his pillow. Sometimes I sat on his side just to feel close to him again. At night, I reached out in my sleep, forgetting for a moment that there was no one there. Those were the hardest moments, the half-awake seconds before reality returned. Grief is strange like that. It doesn't come in waves, it hides in quiet things. The empty chair at breakfast, the missing goodnight, the silence that waits between breaths. I tried to distract myself with chores. I sorted bills, cleaned drawers, and fixed things he used to fix. Every document I touched still had his name on it. His handwriting appeared everywhere, on old notes, reminders, even grocery lists. It made me feel like he was still here, but also like he had never really been mine. I started to wonder how long he had been planning to leave. Did he know months before? Did he look at me one morning, already thinking of her? That thought cut deeper than anything. People told me to move on, to find new hobbies, to travel. They said I was free now, as if losing a husband was the same as gaining independence. But freedom feels like a punishment when your heart still belongs to someone. I didn't want new things. I wanted the old things back, the way he used to smile at me from across the table, the way he would ask if I wanted a blanket when we watched TV. I missed the small things the most. I didn't talk much about it. People mean well, but they don't understand. They think pain can be fixed with advice. So I kept quiet. I spent most of my time alone. I cooked simple meals, walked in the garden, and tried to fill the hours. Some days were easier than others. Some days I woke up feeling strong. Other days I cried before I even got out of bed. But no matter how bad it got, I still did what needed to be done. Life doesn't stop for heartbreak. It just becomes heavier. When I finally finished boxing up his things, I sat on the floor surrounded by years of memories. Photos, letters, gifts, all reminders of what used to be. I didn't throw anything away. I just sealed the boxes and stacked them neatly in the corner. It wasn't closure, but it was control. I couldn't control his choices, but I could control what was left behind. That small sense of order gave me peace, even if only for a moment. I started noticing how quiet evenings could stretch endlessly. I tried reading, knitting, even watching shows he never liked, but nothing filled the silence. I missed being seen. I missed being part of someone's day. I missed being loved. Loneliness has a sound. It's the tick of a clock when you realize no one's coming home. Still, I survived. I kept the house running, paid the bills, cooked for myself. I learned to live without waiting. I told myself that maybe one day I'd stop thinking about him every time I passed his chair. I told myself I'd forget his voice, but I never really did. Even when I stopped missing the man, I couldn't stop missing the life we had. That was my aftermath. Quiet days, long nights, and the slow understanding that sometimes love doesn't die when it ends. It just lives quietly inside you, waiting for something that will never come back. One afternoon, I decided to finish sorting through the last of his things. I had avoided the drawer where he kept all the papers for weeks. I didn't want to see his name on more documents, but something inside me said it was time. I sat at the table with a box of files, one by one opening old envelopes, bills, and receipts. It felt strange touching things that once belonged to both of us. Every paper told a story: a house payment, a car repair, a trip we once took together. His handwriting was everywhere. It made my heart ache. Then I found a thick folder at the bottom of the box. It was his insurance file. I almost put it aside, thinking it didn't matter anymore. But curiosity made me open it. I turned each page slowly. Policy details, bank information, payment slips, all still in perfect order. I reached the last page and froze. My name was there. I was listed as the sole beneficiary. I stared at it for a long time, reading it again and again to be sure. He had never changed it, not even after he left me for her. For a moment, I didn't know what to feel. A part of me wanted to tear it up, to erase every link between us. Another part wanted to hold on to it, not for the money, but for what it meant. After all those years together, after all the pain and betrayal, somewhere in his mind he had still left that line untouched. Maybe he forgot. Maybe he didn't care. Or maybe deep down, he knew that no matter who he went to, I was the one who had stood by him when it mattered. I sat there, thinking about everything we had shared. The birthdays, the illnesses, the hard years when we barely had enough but still made it through. I thought about how I used to remind him to pay the premiums, how I kept every receipt filed properly. I did it because I cared about our future. Now it was like the past had handed me something back, a reminder that I once mattered. I placed the folder on the table and stared out the window. The day was bright, but I felt hollow inside. I didn't want revenge. I didn't even want the money. What I wanted was a reason. Why had he chosen someone else after 30 years? Why had he made me feel small, unwanted, replaceable? The insurance paper didn't answer those questions, but it gave me something I didn't expect: quiet control. In a life that had fallen apart, I suddenly had one thing that was still mine. I tucked the file safely back into its folder. I didn't tell anyone about it. Not my friends, not my niece, not even the lawyer who once helped us with taxes. It was my secret. A strange comfort that sat quietly in the back of my mind. Every time I thought of him laughing with that young woman, I reminded myself, she could have his company, but I still had the last piece of our life together. Days went by. I didn't touch the folder again, but I knew exactly where it was. Sometimes I caught myself wondering if he had ever planned to change it and just never got around to it, or if part of him wanted me to have it. I'll never know. But life has a strange way of keeping balance. What we lose one day comes back in another form, even if it's not what we expected. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay awake thinking about the paper, about what it represented. It wasn't about the insurance. It was about all the things that couldn't be replaced. Loyalty, memories, the years I gave him without asking for anything back. I realized that even though he had left me, he could never truly erase me. Our life was written in too many places, and one of those places was still holding my name. I closed my eyes and finally felt a small sense of peace. For the first time since he walked out, I didn't feel powerless. The woman he ran to might have taken his heart, but the life he built with me still carried my mark, and I didn't have to say a single word to prove it. A week passed after I found the insurance file. Life had gone quiet again. I was beginning to settle into my routine, cooking for one, reading before bed, checking the garden every morning. I still thought about him sometimes, but less each day. I didn't know where he was living now. I didn't ask. Some wounds heal faster when you stop touching them. But that peace didn't last long. One afternoon the phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, but something in me said I should. The voice on the other end was calm, professional. She said she was calling from the hospital. For a moment I didn't understand what she meant. Then she said his name. My heart dropped. She said there had been an accident on the highway. A bad one. He was in critical condition. They needed confirmation for his insurance coverage and wanted to verify who signed the papers. I couldn't speak at first. My hand tightened around the phone. After all the anger, all the silence, hearing his name like that broke something open inside me. I sat down slowly, trying to breathe. My mind went blank. I could barely listen to what she was saying. Accident, surgery, emergency, words that didn't seem real. I asked if he would be okay. She didn't have answers. She just needed to confirm details. I told her to hold on and went to the drawer where the insurance file was kept. My hand shook as I pulled it out. I looked at the page again. My name, still there, still legal. He had never changed it. Somehow that paper had waited for this moment. I told her yes, I had the documents. She asked if I was still the policyholder. I said yes. There was a long pause. Then she asked if I was his wife. I hesitated before answering. For a second, I thought of saying no. He had left me, built a new life, given his love to someone else. But on paper, in law, and in truth, I was still his wife. The young woman he ran to might have had his attention, but she didn't have his name. Not where it mattered. When I hung up, I sat in silence for a long time. My tea had gone cold. I looked at the walls, the pictures, the clock ticking too loudly. Memories started rushing back. The night he walked out. The laughter I heard through other people's phones. The photo of him with her. I wondered if she knew where he was, if she was on her way to the hospital. I wondered what she would do when they told her she had no right to make decisions for him. I didn't call anyone. I didn't rush to the hospital. I just sat there, feeling strange. I didn't know what I was supposed to feel. Sadness, anger, pity. Maybe all of them at once. I thought of how he used to say I worried too much, that life would take care of itself. I guess it finally had. I looked at the insurance papers again and placed them carefully back into the folder. Everything was exactly as he had left it, except him. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake thinking about how life changes so fast. One week, he was out smiling with someone new. The next, he was lying in a hospital bed, helpless. It wasn't karma I felt. It was grief mixed with disbelief. 30 years of marriage doesn't disappear easily, even when the love has faded. Part of me still cared, even if I didn't want to admit it. The next morning, I called the hospital again to confirm that everything was settled with the paperwork. The nurse thanked me and said someone would update me if needed. I didn't ask for details. I didn't want to hear more. I had done what was required. That was enough. I spent the rest of the day sitting quietly by the window, watching the sky change color. The air outside felt heavy, as if it carried everything I couldn't say. Sometimes life doesn't give you choices. It gives you moments that force you to face the past, whether you're ready or not. That phone call reminded me of all the years I had spent waiting for him, waiting for love, for respect, for peace. Now I was waiting again, but this time it wasn't for his return. It was for the end of a story I didn't write, but still had to finish. When the hospital called again the next day, I was ready. The nurse spoke softly, asking to confirm my name once more. I said yes, that was me. She explained they were finalizing his insurance records and wanted to make sure the policy matched. I could hear voices in the background, people moving, phones ringing, life going on. I sat quietly, listening, feeling far away from it all. It was strange, being part of his life again, but only through a piece of paper. She asked if I wanted to be updated on his condition. For a moment, I didn't answer. My heart beat fast, but my mind stayed calm. I thought about all the times I had stayed awake waiting for him, all the years I had cared, all the moments he ignored me for someone else. I thought about the day he left and how easily he turned his back on me. Then I said no. I didn't want updates. I told her his new wife could handle that. The nurse paused, maybe surprised, but didn't question me. She said thank you and hung up. After the call, I sat in silence. I looked around the room that had once been our home. Everything was still. The curtains, the plants, the photo on the wall. It felt like time had stopped. I realized something then. I wasn't angry anymore. Anger had burned out months ago. What I felt now was emptiness mixed with acceptance. I finally understood that the man I had loved didn't exist anymore. The person in that hospital bed might have his face, his voice, his name, but he wasn't mine. He hadn't been mine for a long time. I made tea and sat by the window. The day outside looked ordinary, people walking, cars passing by. Life didn't care about my story or my pain. It kept moving. I thought about how much energy I had wasted trying to hold on to someone who had already let go. Love is blind, they say, but I think love just refuses to see what hurts. I used to believe I could fix everything if I tried hard enough. Now I knew better. Some things are meant to break. Some people are meant to leave. I remembered the younger woman then, the one he had chosen over me. I imagined her sitting in that waiting room, scared, confused, maybe angry. She must have thought she would be the one signing the papers, making decisions. She must have believed she was his future. But the truth was written in ink long before she arrived. I didn't feel sorry for her. Maybe this was her moment to learn what I had already learned, that love built on lies never lasts. I didn't wish him harm. I didn't pray for revenge. I only wished for peace. For both of us. I hoped he would wake up long enough to understand what he had done. Not to me, but to himself. I hoped he would see how quickly life can change, how loyalty matters more than excitement, how 30 years of shared life can't be replaced by a few months of novelty. I didn't need him to apologize. I just wanted him to realize. That night, I went to bed early but couldn't sleep. I lay there thinking about the years we had spent together. I thought about how I used to believe in forever. I smiled at how naive I had been. Forever is just a word people use when they're happy. It doesn't survive when life tests it. I had spent most of my life being his wife. Now I was learning how to be myself again. It was strange but freeing. In the morning, I went about my day as usual. I watered the plants, swept the floor, and cooked breakfast. Nothing had changed, yet everything felt different. I felt lighter. I realized I didn't need to wait for closure or answers. The truth had already spoken, in his absence, in the phone calls, in the papers that still had my name. I had survived the worst part already. What came next didn't scare me anymore. For the first time, I felt calm thinking about him. I didn't wish he would come back or call me. I didn't wish for explanations. I just hoped he found whatever peace he had been chasing, because I finally found mine. At the hospital, everything was chaos. Nurses moved quickly through the hallways. Phones rang, and the sound of machines filled the air. The younger woman was already there when the staff called to confirm the paperwork. She looked worried, desperate, asking everyone for updates. For a moment, people assumed she was the wife. She introduced herself with confidence, saying she needed to sign the forms. But when the clerk asked for her identification and compared the names on record, her expression changed. The name on the insurance policy didn't match hers. My name was still there, printed clearly. The clerk explained gently that only the legal spouse could authorize treatment. The younger woman froze. She didn't understand at first. She repeated her name, said there must be a mistake. The clerk shook his head. The documents were official, verified, and unchanged. She demanded they fix it immediately. He told her they couldn't. It wasn't a matter of preference or emotion. It was the law. Her voice grew louder, her words sharper. People began to look. The hallway went quiet for a moment as she stood there pale and angry. She called his name then, shouting that she needed to see him, that she had the right to decide for him. But the staff didn't move. They told her to wait. The power she thought she had was gone. Every decision, every signature, every approval depended on me, the woman he left behind. She must have realized then that love and paperwork don't always follow the same path. Her hands shook as she tried to call someone, maybe his friend, maybe her family, but no one could help her. When the doctor came out to explain his condition, he didn't look at her. He looked around and asked for me. She stood silent, her face red, her eyes wide. I wasn't there, but my name was. My name on the files. My name on the insurance. My name that carried the final word. She must have felt it. The helplessness of standing in a place where you have no say. It was the same helplessness I had felt the day he left me. Now it was her turn to feel small. The clerk tried to calm her, but she wouldn't listen. She kept saying she was his partner, that they lived together, that she was the one he loved. But the papers didn't care about love. They cared about signatures, about what was written, and who had the right to sign. The clerk told her again that without my approval, nothing could be done. She grew frantic, asking for my contact information, saying she needed to talk to me. But I didn't answer the phone. I had already made my choice when I confirmed my name. Hours passed, and she stayed in that waiting room, pacing back and forth, calling people who didn't answer. Maybe she thought I would come rushing in, taking over like a bitter old wife. But I didn't. I stayed home, quiet, letting things unfold as they were meant to. I didn't need to be there to make a point. The truth was already doing it for me. Later, one of the nurses told her he had woken up briefly but was too weak to talk. She begged to see him, but they said they needed approval first, from me. That must have been the moment panic truly set in. She realized she wasn't just powerless, she was invisible. Everything she thought she had built with him meant nothing in the eyes of the law. I didn't feel joy hearing it, just a strange stillness. Life had a way of teaching lessons none of us wanted. That night, she probably sat by his bedside, holding his hand, whispering things that didn't matter anymore. She probably told him she would fix it, that everything would be fine. But deep down, she must have known it wasn't in her hands. The woman he left behind was still the one holding every thread. The same woman he had called old, predictable, replaceable. She was the one the hospital called Mrs. on every form. When I finally lay in bed that night, I didn't think of revenge. I thought of irony. How the man who once said he didn't need me couldn't even be treated without my consent. The same hands that once cooked his meals now held his fate. I didn't ask for that power, but it came quietly, like justice in its simplest form. I didn't have to say a word. Life had already spoken for me. When he finally woke up, he was weak. The nurse said his eyes opened slowly, confused, searching the room. He didn't know where he was or how much time had passed. Machines beeped softly beside him, and the smell of medicine filled the air. The younger woman sat near his bed, holding his hand tightly. She must have felt relief seeing him awake. She leaned forward, waiting for him to speak, waiting for him to see her first. But the nurse moved closer and said my name. She told him that I had confirmed the insurance, that my signature had authorized his care. He looked around, confused. The nurse repeated my name. I wasn't there, but it was as if my presence filled the room. He blinked slowly, processing what he had heard. The younger woman stayed quiet. Then his face changed. Anger, disbelief, shame, all at once. His voice broke as he tried to speak, but no words came. He realized what had happened. He realized the woman he had left, the one he had forgotten, was still the one who mattered when it came to life and death. The nurse tried to calm him, explaining that his records were still under my name, that I was still the legal spouse, that the insurance could not be changed. He grew restless, pulling at the wires on his arms, trying to sit up. The young woman tried to hold him down, but he pushed her hand away weakly. His voice grew louder, shaky and desperate. He wanted to erase my name, but it was too late. He had built his life on papers that still carried me. The nurse asked him to relax. He didn't listen. He started shouting, his voice cracking, calling for someone to fix it, saying it wasn't fair. The staff told him to stay calm or he would hurt himself. But panic doesn't listen to reason. The young woman tried to soothe him, saying it would be okay, but he turned his face away from her. Maybe for the first time he saw how fragile everything was, how quickly loyalty comes back to demand its due. He kept asking how this could happen, how my name was still there. The answer was simple. He never bothered to change it. He was so busy chasing a new life that he forgot the foundation of the old one. And now that mistake had come back to him in the worst moment possible. The nurse said he needed rest. They gave him something to calm down. Slowly, his voice faded, replaced by the quiet hum of machines. Outside the room, the younger woman sat alone. She looked lost, staring at the floor. She must have understood what I already knew, that no matter how much he tried to rewrite the story, I was still the ending he couldn't escape. The hospital saw me as his wife, the law recognized me as his partner, and the life he left behind was still tied to my name. She had love, but I had the last word. When the nurse called me later to update me, I didn't ask many questions. I just listened. She said he had woken up, that he was stable for now. I thanked her. She asked if I wanted to visit. I said no. There was nothing left to say. I had already said everything through silence. My absence was my message. He could scream, he could fight, but he couldn't undo what he had ignored for so long. That night, I sat in my chair by the window, looking out at the quiet street. I thought about him in that hospital bed, surrounded by strangers, with a woman who now understood how it felt to be powerless. I didn't feel joy or revenge. I just felt peace. The truth had revealed itself without my help. I didn't need to raise my voice. The world had done it for me. Sometimes justice doesn't come loudly. It comes quietly, wrapped in paperwork, in timing, in the choices we forget to correct. He had left me for a younger woman, but when it mattered most, it was still my name that kept him alive. He had chosen her for comfort, but in the end, he had no choice but to face what he abandoned. That was the confrontation, not with words or anger, just truth, silent, heavy, and unchangeable. When the nurse called again the next morning, she said the hospital needed my signature for further procedures. I listened without emotion. She explained that as the legal spouse, I had the authority to approve or deny anything beyond basic care. I asked what that meant. She said it covered everything: surgery, special treatments, private rooms, even the visitors list. I stayed quiet for a long time. Then I said I would come by to sign. My hands didn't shake. My voice didn't break. I felt steady, maybe for the first time in years. I took the folder with the insurance papers and left the house. The hospital was cold and smelled like disinfectant. I walked through the halls slowly, the sound of footsteps echoing against the floor. When I reached the counter, I told them my name. The clerk recognized it immediately. She handed me the forms, speaking softly, as if I were fragile. I wasn't. I read every page carefully. My name appeared again and again. Every line was a reminder of what he had left behind. When I reached the section for medical authorization, I paused. I could choose full care or basic care. I thought about the years we spent together, about the times he laughed while I cried, about how he had looked at me like I was invisible. I thought about the woman waiting outside, desperate to take charge, to play the role she had stolen. And then I thought about myself, the woman who stayed, who built the life he abandoned, who had given her heart and received silence in return. I picked up the pen and signed for basic care only, nothing extra. I didn't do it out of cruelty. I did it because that was fair. I wasn't his wife in his heart anymore, but I was in every other way that mattered. I owed him honesty, not devotion. I gave him what was required, nothing more, nothing less. When I finished, the clerk asked if I wanted to leave a message for him. I said no. There was nothing I needed to say. Words were useless now. He had heard them all before and still walked away. I left the hospital quietly. Outside, the young woman was sitting on a bench, her face tired, her eyes red from crying. She didn't look at me, and I didn't look at her. We both knew who I was and what that meant. I walked past her slowly, not with pride, not with anger, but with peace. I had no fight left in me. I had already won in silence. The power I held wasn't something I wanted. It was something life had given back to me after taking everything else. As I walked home, I realized control doesn't always mean revenge. Sometimes it means finally understanding that you can make decisions without needing approval. For years, every choice I made was tied to him, his comfort, his plans, his moods. Now, every choice was mine again. Signing that form was more than an act of authority. It was a quiet declaration that I existed beyond him. When I got home, I put the papers back in their place. I made tea and sat by the window. The world outside was bright, calm, almost peaceful. For the first time, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel forgotten. I felt whole in my own way. I didn't wonder if he would survive or if he would call. I had done my part. The rest was out of my hands. People think control means having power over others, but real control is being able to walk away without hate. I didn't hate him anymore. I didn't even pity him. I just saw him as part of a life that was finished. The woman he left me for could stay by his side, but she would never have what I had: the right to choose, the right to decide, the right to end it quietly. That night, I slept without dreams. No memories, no pain, no noise in my head, just silence. The kind that feels like peace, not loneliness. I woke up the next morning knowing something had changed inside me. I wasn't his wife anymore in spirit, but I was myself again, and that was enough. After I left the hospital, things began to unfold just as I expected. The younger woman couldn't stay quiet. She stormed through the hallways, crying, shouting, trying to find someone who would listen. The nurses tried to calm her, but she wouldn't stop. She kept saying she loved him, that she deserved to make the decisions. But no one could help her. The staff looked at her with sympathy, not power. In their eyes, she was just someone who came after. They all knew who I was, even though I wasn't there. My name was on every form, every file, every signature. That was all it took. She called my number several times. I didn't answer. I watched the phone ring and ring until it went silent. I had nothing to say to her. There was no need for confrontation. The truth was already louder than words. She wanted my permission for treatments, for bills, for updates, but I had already done what I needed to do. I had given basic approval. Nothing more. Nothing she could control. She had built her comfort on my foundation, and now that foundation had turned against her. Neighbors started hearing whispers. People in our small town talk fast when something unusual happens. They said they saw her crying outside the hospital, sitting alone. Some said she was shouting that it wasn't fair. Others said she was begging someone to find me, but I didn't show up. I didn't need to. The story was already writing itself without me. At home, I kept things simple. I made my tea, watered my plants, and kept the curtains open. I didn't hide. I wasn't ashamed. For years, I had lived quietly while being ignored. Now my silence had become stronger than any defense. I didn't rejoice in her pain. I didn't celebrate his suffering. I just let life balance what it had unbalanced. I didn't have to do anything. Everything was happening naturally. The hospital continued to call with updates, but I didn't ask for details. I told them to keep me informed if anything required my approval. Otherwise, I didn't want to be disturbed. They respected that. Each call ended with the same polite tone. "Thank you, Mrs." That word used to make me feel old. Now it felt like justice. It reminded me that some things can't be replaced, no matter how hard someone tries. The younger woman started visiting our old neighborhood, maybe looking for me. One of my neighbors said she stopped by my gate one afternoon, standing outside for a long time before leaving. I didn't go out. I watched her from the window. She looked smaller than I remembered. The confidence she once carried was gone. She was just a scared girl now, lost in a world she thought she owned. I didn't feel hate. I just saw a reflection of the woman I used to be, waiting for a man to choose her, to save her, to make her whole. Days turned into weeks. I never visited the hospital again. I didn't attend to his affairs or talk to his friends. They called once, asking if I was angry, if I planned to help him recover. I said no. I wasn't angry anymore. I was done. The version of him I loved had vanished long before the accident. The man lying in that bed was a stranger with my last name, nothing more. Sometimes at night I thought about him. I wondered if he was thinking about me, about what he had done. Maybe he wanted to apologize. Maybe he was too proud. Maybe he finally realized that the things he threw away were the things that had kept his life steady. But by then, it didn't matter. Regret doesn't heal what time has already sealed. The young woman eventually stopped calling. I think she realized there was no way to change what had been signed. She couldn't rewrite the truth, just like I couldn't rewrite the past. The hospital continued doing what I had authorized, nothing more, nothing less. He was taken care of, just not in the way she wanted. I spent my evenings in silence, watching the sun go down. There was no anger left inside me, no noise, no guilt. The fallout didn't destroy me. It set me free. For years I had lived in the shadow of someone else's choices. Now I lived in the quiet light of my own. He had left me for a younger woman, but in the end, I was the one who stayed standing when everything else fell apart. Justice didn't come through revenge. It came quietly, through truth. After the noise faded, after the calls stopped, after the hospital updates ended, I sat alone one evening and realized it was finally over. I didn't cry. I didn't smile either. I just felt something deep inside me settle, like dust after a long storm. He had chosen youth over loyalty, excitement over peace, and now he was left with the result of his own choices. I didn't have to do anything. Life had done it for me. People around me started to hear what had happened. Some said I must feel proud. Others said I should feel guilty. But I didn't feel either. Pride would mean I cared about winning. Guilt would mean I cared about losing. I cared about neither. I was simply done. For years I had carried the weight of a love that broke me. Now the weight was gone. I could breathe again. I could drink my tea without feeling like my heart was heavy. The younger woman didn't come back after that. I never saw her again. Maybe she left the city. Maybe she stayed. I didn't ask. I didn't need to know. She had learned what she needed to learn. That love without respect is just an illusion. She had taken what wasn't hers and lost what could never be replaced. I didn't hate her. I didn't wish her pain. I just hoped she would remember this lesson if she ever looked into another woman's eyes the way she once looked into mine. As for him, I heard through a mutual friend that he recovered slowly. They said he was quiet now, no longer loud, no longer proud. He didn't speak much. Maybe he had too many thoughts that wouldn't leave him alone. Maybe he realized how fragile everything was. I never visited. I didn't send flowers or messages. There was nothing left to say. We had already said our goodbyes, not through words, but through choices. His choices had written our ending. My silence had sealed it. Some nights I sat by the window and remembered our younger days, not to miss them, but to understand them. I remembered how he used to make me laugh, how we once dreamed together. Those memories didn't hurt anymore. They felt like photographs from another life, faded but still real. I didn't erase them. I just put them back where they belonged in the past. People sometimes asked if I would ever forgive him. I said I already had. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting or excusing. It means you stop letting the pain control you. I forgave him not for his sake, but for mine. I didn't want to grow old carrying bitterness. Bitterness is heavy, and I had carried enough. I wanted peace, and peace needs space, so I made room for it. I didn't get justice in a courtroom or through arguments. My justice came in the balance of life. The same man who left me for someone younger ended up needing the woman he left behind. The same woman who thought she had won learned what it means to lose. And I, the one who was called old and dull, became the one who didn't have to fight to be heard. That was justice. Not loud, not cruel, just fair. Now, when I pour my tea in the morning, I don't think of him with anger. I think of him as a chapter that ended. He gave me years, both good and bad, and then he gave me freedom without meaning to. I built my peace out of what he broke. I rebuilt myself from the pieces he left behind. That is the kind of justice that matters. The one that restores you, not the one that destroys someone else. I look at my life now and see calm instead of chaos. My home is quiet, but it is mine. My days are slow, but they belong to me. I don't wait for anyone to come home. I don't wait for love that has already gone. I just live softly, peacefully, without apology. He once left me for a younger woman. I once cried until I couldn't breathe. But now, when I think of everything that happened, I simply say, he made his choice, and I made mine. He chose youth, and I chose peace. In the end, peace lasted longer. That is my justice.